Hi everyone, in this video I'll be installing CachyOS alongside Windows without using a USB drive. Going to download CachyOS, going to CachyOS.org, and then going to download, and I'm going to download the desktop edition direct, and there's my file. And now I'm going to open up disk management, start disk management, and so I have my drive here, disk 0, and here's my C drive, and so I'm going to shrink my C drive to make room. And so I have 416 gigabytes free, so more than enough free space. So for this installation, I'm going to be freeing up 50 gigabytes in total. Right click, shrink volume, and I'll do 50,000. Shrink. With this unallocated space, I'm going to be creating 3 new partitions. The first partition will be for a separate UEFI partition for the CachyOS boot files. If I use the same existing UEFI partition that Windows uses here, then likely I'll run into a problem later, as Microsoft is known for removing anything not related to Windows in this partition, which can happen, for example, after a Windows update. And if the CachyOS boot files are not there, then you won't be able to boot into CachyOS. The second partition is going to be just a regular NTFS partition. So in the installer, I can resize my existing C drive for CachyOS, but it's possible that it may not go as expected and you get an error later on. So to avoid this, I'll be creating a separate NTFS partition and I'll be replacing it, which I will discuss further in the installer. And the third partition will be for the CachyOS installation media. Going to create the first partition, and this is for the UEFI partition. I'll do 512 megabytes. Next, next. Setting it as FAT32. I'll call it UEFI CachyOS. Next, finish. Going back to the unallocated space, new simple volume. Next. And so this is going to be for CachyOS itself, and I'll have to leave some space for the installation media, about 3000 megabytes. So I'll do 46488. Next. Next. NTFS volume label. I'll call it CachyOS. Next. Finish. And then the last partition. Next. 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 This will be FAT32. And this will be for the ISO. Next. Finish. The 3 new partitions have been created. And now I'm going to go back into my downloads folder. Going to mount the ISO file, open, I'm going to copy everything, go into my F drive, paste, and going to go back into disk management. And so the D drive here, I'll have to change this from a basic data partition to an UEFI partition, otherwise the installer won't recognize it correctly. And for the F drive here with the ISO, your computer should be able to boot from it, but if not, it may be because it's seen as a basic data partition, so I'll change this to an UEFI partition as well. So I'm going to open up disk part, start, this part, run as administrator, yes, type in list disk, select disk 0, list my partitions, and the first partition is partition 5. Type help set ID, and then scroll up. Copy the UEFI system partition value in hex. Type in set ID equals paste. Alright, it's been changed, and we can see in disk management as well. Going to do a list partitions again, and I'm going to do the same thing for partition number 7, which has the installation media. Select partition 7, and I'm going to set the ID. Alright, it has been set. And now I'm going to reboot my computer and go into the BIOS. In your BIOS, ensure that secure boot is disabled, and if you have fast boot, disable it as well. And now I'm going to do a one-time boot into the installation partition. It's labeled as UEFI OS, and how I can confirm that: go back into Windows, open up a command prompt as administrator, type in bcdedit /enum firmware, and at the bottom you can see that there's device partition F, the F drive that was created, and the description UEFI OS. So I'm going to select it, and Grub comes up, and I'm going to start CachyOS. Alright, it started up. I get the welcome screen. I'm going to go to Launch Installer, and select your bootloader. So it'll allow you to select between Windows and CachyOS. I'm going to use Refine. Select your language, next. Your region and zone, next. Keyboard, next. And here it's asking you to select your storage device. So selecting my drive here. And then here I'm going to be using replace a partition. And so this was the NTFS partition that I created earlier in Windows. So I'm going to be replacing it. And then for the file system, I'm going to be using the default BTRFS. And so the NTFS partition that I created in Windows, it's SDA5. And after selecting it, we see that it turns red. And we can see here that it says CachyOS. And then there's the EFI system partition. It defaults to dev SDA1, which we don't want to use. I'm going to be using SDA4. SDA4 is the 512 megabyte partition I created in Windows. And then next. And here it's asking you to select your desktop. I'm going to be using Plasma. Next. And here's the additional packages screen. I'm going to be leaving it as the default. And of course, if there's anything you want to add, you can always add it in afterwards. Next. And here it's asking you for your name, login name, computer name, and password. Next. And so this screen is a summary of everything it's going to do. You can scroll down, and when ready, hit install. Install now. And so you can go to the bottom right and select the icon here, and it's going to toggle the log. And you can hit it again to get out of it. And so this will take a little bit of time to install. Alright, CachyOS has been installed. Restart now. And it should be able to boot into Refine, the boot manager. But to make sure, I'm going to go into the BIOS just to confirm. Done. Alright, in my boot order here, I have the Windows Boot Manager is first, UEFI OS is second, and third is the Refine Boot Manager. So I'll have to change that, so Refine is first, and then save changes, then exit. Alright, the Refine Boot Manager comes up, and using the arrow keys, I got Windows here, CachyOS. This is the installation media, labeled as ISO. And going down, this would reboot and go into my BIOS. This would reboot my computer. This would shut it down. This is to manage hidden tags, so if I want to remove an entry here, and this is about Refine, and this will go into UEFI shell, and this would also go into the installation media. And so now I'm going to boot into CachyOS. Log in. Alright, got the welcome screen. Gonna close it. Alright, and CachyOS has been installed. Now I no longer need the installation media, so I'm going to delete it. So to do that, I can use Pardon, Partition Editor, or gpardon, which is the GUI version of it. And so if I go into the menu, gpardon is not there, so I'm just going to install it. I'm going to go into terminal, and I'm going to sudo in, sudo su dash, put in my password, and I'm going to use package manager to install gpardon. Yes. Alright, so it's been installed. And if I do a df-h, and we see dev SDA5, it has 46 gigabytes. And so after I delete the installation media, I'm going to use that space on dev SDA5. And so I'm going to do a show on the file system. BTRFS file system show. And so we see it there. And I'm going to go and open up gpardon. Put in my password. And there's my installation media partition. So select it. Right click, delete. And so we see it here, it's going to delete it when operation pending. So I'm going to hit the check mark. It's going to apply. Close. So it's been deleted. And now I'm going to resize dev SDA5. right click, resize. I'm going to use all the free space, resize, and then hit the check mark, apply. And so it's completed. Go into details. And so it's calibrated it, and then so it grew it, and then it did a resize for it. Close. And then going back into the terminal, doing a file system show again, and we see that it has been increased. And now I'm going to reboot my computer just to confirm I can get back into Windows. Reboot. Alright, refund comes up, and I have Windows and I have CachyOS, and the ISO option is no longer there. So I'm going to go into Windows. Alright, Windows loads up, so that's it. That's how you can install CachyOS alongside Windows without using a USB drive. I hope this video was useful, and I thank you for watching. Bye now.